This is a Hipsters of the Coast podcast. This Doomed Travelers podcast is brought to you by Hipsters of the Coast, your destination for magic news, strategy, and entertainment. And by Casthaven, where you can build your magic collection like a pro. Visit casthaven.com for more information.
All right, welcome to another episode of Doomed Travelers. I'm your host, Rich Stein, and I'm joined this week by my co-host, Dave McCoy, and our panelists of sorts, Matt the Obliterator Jones and Brendan McNamara. This week we are going to talk about cheating, the world of illicit magic. And we're going to talk about experiences with cheating, and what we feel the DCI's role in cheating is, and whether or not we're happy with the kind of suspensions that have been given out lately. So to start, we're going to go around and we're going to talk about our experiences with cheating while Matt, Dave, and I queue up some bounties here and then jump into a strike on Destiny. So while we're doing that, Brendan, why don't you start us off and give us a personal story about your experience with cheating at a Magic tournament.
Okay. Well, I don't think I've ever been like shuffle cheated or anything really blatant. But the one situation I remember is one I wrote about a couple of years ago for the Hipsters website. It was at a Theros sealed Grand Prix, and it was on day 2, and I had a draft, and I had that heroic creature, Wave Crash Triton, I think it's what it's called, that when you targeted it, you would lock down a creature for a turn so it wouldn't untap. And I had done that, and then, it was kind of a long turn, and then my opponent untapped his creature, and it was like I had a Daxos out that when it hit him, I get to draw a card and all this stuff. It's really bad if he doesn't have a blocker, and it was his only blocker. And I didn't notice it for whatever reason because it was my first day 2 or something. But he untapped it. It was very, very favorable for him to untap it. I realized it at the end of my next turn. Like I didn't attack because I was like, oh no, he's got a blocker. I can't attack. And then it dawned on me later. I was like, wait a minute, that was supposed to be tapped from the previous turn. And of course he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. And we called a judge, and the judge was like, well, we can't walk it back. And like in my mind, I'm thinking, this guy is cheating me, or he's angle shooting or whatever you want to call.
Right.
It's not really like a planned out cheat as much as I really need this to happen. I'm going to do something that is against the rules, and maybe he won't notice. And like if I had noticed, it's very easy because he just doesn't untap, and then I'm like, oh, that guy's supposed to stay untapped, and like, oh, or stay tapped. It's like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The
intent,
easy to fix.
Yeah, the intent is really difficult there. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's obvious that you can rewind that, but it's also not the most straightforward thing. So, Dave, what about you? Let's hear a story about.
Wait, real quick, Dave. What kind of burn is this?
What are the modifiers? It's just heroic and juggler.
Yeah, there's no burn.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. So I honestly haven't been in any real high stakes tournament situation. I've day 2'd one Legacy GP and 05'd day 2. So it's not like I've been in a position where people have obviously had a huge incentive to cheat. But I do remember as a kid, I played Magic for like 6 months, and I'm very competitive in Magic, but also in something like a first-person shooter. And I remember as a kid, I was new to Magic. I was really bad. Obviously, I didn't know anything about Magic, and I remember the pressure in my mind to be better than everyone else, even though I obviously wasn't, was so high that I was trying to think of ways to like outsmart them. Like, stuff like mana weaving, which didn't seem like cheating at the time. That kind of stuff. Or like I honestly don't remember what I did as a kid, but I'm sure I did things that would get you banned from the DCI just because like I really wanted to win and I was just not a good Magic player. And I think honestly that's where a lot of cheating instincts come from. Like everybody wants to win. Everybody sees themselves as an above average player. Well, except for maybe Matt Jones. I don't know.
Definitely do not see myself as an above average player.
But you know, most humans see themselves as above average. And when you don't perform to that expectation, you have such an immense internal pressure to perform up to that level. And if you can't do it fair and square, you're like, you cut corners. And I think that's where a lot of this pressure to cheat comes from.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. What about you, Matt?
I have only really experienced cheating one time, and I didn't even see it. Hunter was watching my match. It was a PTQ in Philadelphia. Sealed. I don't know why I just ran into that room. I almost killed myself. It was sealed, and this kid who is a grinder, I've seen him. His brother's very good. His brother's older than him. He's a little younger, and he was shuffling my deck in such a way that he was looking at the cards. He was like just in his hand, not riffle shuffling like you do with regular playing cards, but like just shuffling with his hands. And he was like pausing to see what was in my deck, I think. Hunter said he could see him like looking at my deck as he shuffled. Yeah. And I wasn't even paying attention. He's like, Matt, you gotta watch people. Because he's totally, he knows all these cards that are in your deck. He might not be putting them in an order and cheating you that way, but he is cheating you by gaining information. And I was like sort of bummed out by that. I think that might have been one of the times that I went to a Phillies game because I was just tired of whatever was going on.
Right.
Which is basically every time I've been to Philadelphia.
Is that the one where you went into the murder hole in the subway station?
No, that was a different one. The murder hole was very scary. But anyways, that's my thing. And nothing came of it. I mean, the kid kicked my ass, as most children I play against in Magic do.
Right, of course. No, I've had I've definitely had my fair share, I guess, or unfair share, because I've had a lot more experiences with cheating than you guys. Having played, of course, back in the 90s. There goes my complete a strike without dying bounty. Having played a lot more competitively in the 90s, there were lots and lots and lots and lots of cheats going on back then. Shuffle cheating was the most, the most prevalent form of cheating for sure, by far. I died again. I can't play Destiny while thinking about cheating, apparently. Anyways, I'll share a story from Atlantic City because it's so fresh in my mind. At Grand Prix Atlantic City, I'm playing Magic again for the first time in years. At a Grand Prix, it's limited is the format, and it's round 4. I'm 2-1, and so is my opponent. And we both sit down, introduce ourselves. I take out my deck. I'm shuffling. They're making their announcements. They're like, all right, it's, you have 50 minutes in the round. You can begin. My opponent at this point now, after they've announced that the round's begun, takes their deck out of the deck box, puts it on the playmat in front of them, and then proceeds to side shuffle maybe 4 times. And the entire time they're side shuffling, they're not actually shuffling. They're just taking the top of their deck and putting it on the bottom, and then taking the top of their deck and putting it on the bottom again. And there's no actual shuffling going on. So my opponent presents their deck, and I present mine, and I immediately call a judge over. And my opponent gives me the most incredulous look, like the most, what did I do? I don't understand. Why are you calling a judge? And I'm like, look, man, you just pulled a deck out of that box and handed it to me, and I have no reason not to believe you didn't stack all 40 cards before doing so. And I was just a little shocked that, A, people still try to get away with that one, or B, that they were so ignorant to the prevalence of cheating or how shuffling works that they didn't think to just, shuffle their deck for any good reason. Shuffling is critical to Magic. So it's a very obvious thing when somebody doesn't shuffle their deck. So the judge decided that there was no malicious intent, shuffled both our decks because, being such a upstanding moral citizen, my opponent decided that since I had felt they were cheating, that they felt it was necessary to have a judge shuffle my deck as well. So whatever, judge shuffled my deck. And we went on with our lives. I ended up winning the match. But it was, kind of a surreal thing to see that still going on.
Oh my God.
Oh, hey.
Someone finally found out where Matt Jones lives.
Shit.
So I think in all our cases, we all had kind of minor situations. Certainly nothing like some of the more high-profile cases. I've never had an opponent DQ'd or anything on the spot for cheating. Though there's, we've all seen plenty of that happening on coverage. And I kind of want to talk about one of the more recent scenarios, which is the Steven Speck situation, which is a very recent development. So Steven Speck was at Grand Prix, or was at the Pro Tour, Dragons of Tarkir, and was recently played at a Grand Prix, I think in Vancouver, right?
Yeah, it was Grand Prix Vancouver.
Right, so basically at Grand Prix Vancouver, which was modern, Speck had a lot of success playing the Amulet combo, which is, of course, a fairly explosive combo once it gets going.
Is he the guy who's Sam Black's friend?
No, that's
honestly,
Justin Cohen.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I don't know the answer to that. But anyway, so Steven Speck at the Pro Tour was found to have been basically presenting 53-card decks to his opponent to cut, while keeping 7 cards, for lack of a better term, up his sleeve. Yeah. And he got caught. And, the social media had a field day because he had previously won a Grand Prix or top 8 at a Grand Prix. Did he win Vancouver?
He lost in the finals.
Lost in the finals. So with a combo deck that he had a lot of suspicious turn 1 victories with. So anyways, to make a long story short, it seems that Speck had been using this trick to palm his opening 7 for quite some time. Had a lot of success in a Grand Prix as a result of doing so. And was finally got him to the Pro Tour. Gets caught at the Pro Tour and has just a couple weeks ago officially been suspended by the DCI, I believe for 18 months or was it 3 years? Somebody got, it was 3 years.
I think it was 3 years.
Right, sorry. It was the guy who picked up his creatures got 6 months. Or picked up his land and then used Narset. Got 6 months. But I want to talk about Speck. So Speck gets 3 years. The question now coming out is it enough? For what this guy did, is 3 years a long enough suspension? So that's the question I want to explore a little bit here. What do you guys think? Is 3 years enough for a guy who is basically palming their opening 7 to win on a Grand Prix so that they can play at the Pro Tour and then proceeded to do the same exact thing at the Pro Tour?
I mean, yes.
You think 3 years is enough, Dave?
I mean,
or too much?
3 years is a long time.
Yeah.
To the point, like, they can still play Moto, right? DCI is just sanctioned paper Magic and the mocks, probably. Like, they can't compete in the mocks. Because that would qualify you for sanctioned tournaments.
I would imagine that the DCI would not be so happy. There's nothing they can do, I think, to prevent you from winning a MOCS, an MOCS. for those of you who aren't familiar with the terminology, but I don't think they'd be thrilled. They would probably prevent you from playing in the actual championship.
Yeah, I mean, 3 years is a long time. Like, to the point where after 3 years, you might not even play Magic anymore.
Right.
You know,
Well, I mean, yeah.
It's just a hobby. You know, it's something that's pretty expensive. And if you're in a competitive play group, it's not like you're doing much else other than playing in tournaments like that. So 3 years seems like the kind of length of a ban that would lead you to either leave the game entirely because it's hard to keep up that kind of friend group, or maybe it's long enough for you to think twice before you do it again because it affected your relationship so much. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, like, cheating at a Magic tournament is, especially if it's like a high stakes Magic tournament, like a GP or a Pro Tour, is kind of like a petty theft in terms of like stealing winnings from other potential players. And I mean, it's a pretty low stakes in the grand scheme of things. So 3 years seems.
But I mean, theft is certainly not something. I mean, petty theft in society is something that comes with fairly punishments to match. But at a Magic tournament, what else can you, there's not a lot of infractions you can commit that get you banned from the DCI. So,
taking pictures of people's butt cracks or cheating.
Taking pictures of people's butt cracks. Yeah, no, I guess so.
Stealing people's decks and stuff.
Yeah, so to be fair, yeah, stealing people's decks. So there are some pretty clear guidelines on what gets you suspended forever. And to date, you basically, if you steal people's stuff at a tournament, or if you physically assault people at a tournament, or if you do something to steal from Wizards itself, then that's how you land yourself a lifetime ban from the DCI. But cheating, at least for the most part, cheating does not come with lifetime bans. There are certainly things that the DCI will ban you for life for, but cheating is not one of them. So what about Matt, Brendan, what do you guys think?
I agree with Dave 100%.
Yeah. Brendan?
I agree with Dave. I think that there's at least a chance, if you ban someone for 3 years or so, if they really love Magic, they're just going to be playing Magic all the time. 3 years isn't that long in the lifetime of someone who's been playing a lot of Magic. But people who really love Magic probably aren't the people who are cheating. If you're cheating, you're more into, you're not doing it because, it's a fun game I can play with other people. It's like, what can I get away with? How can I get things out of people? And so I feel like people who are just really just in it to cheat are less likely to, I'm going to, spend 3 years kind of keeping up with the game so that I can be at a competitive level to be able to take advantage of cheating again. There's at least a chance that they won't. Like, for example, when they banned Trevor Humphreys, who was, one of these notorious shuffle cheaters. I guess that happened like 6 months ago or something.
Yeah.
He got banned for 3 or 4 years, and, he's like, something on, in the middle of his keyboard dojo card fighter rant.
Right.
He also put up that he was selling his entire Magic collection. And, hopefully that's a situation where, that's a lot of these people, I think Jared Petcher was like this, like they had played other games like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or something where there's more of a Wild West feel. And then they're like, I can make more money at Magic cheating than I can at Yu-Gi-Oh! Cheating. And then if they find out, you're kicked out for 3 or 4 years, then they may just go back to whatever other horrible things they're doing. Hopefully never to return. But I also think that the DCI is a little bit caught up based on their precedents from the past. Like if Alex Bertoncini gets 3 or 4 years for his second or more infraction, where he's pretty much he's been banned for cheating, come back, and then banned for cheating again. If he's only going to get 3 or 4 years, it's pretty hard for them to ban someone for life on a first offense, especially when it's not something that's 100% obvious what they are doing. If you like set up cameras in the exhibit hall to tape all your opponent's hands while you're facing them, which I don't know how you do this, but If you did something like that and you had a very elaborate system to spy on people and cheat, and maybe you like worked with the tournament organizers to do that, and then you had like a gambling ring set up where you were like point shaving or something. If there was a massive undertaking, I think they might ban someone for life for doing that.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
More than
No,
3 or 4 years.
I agree. I think it's for sure. There's clearly things that would be so malicious to the game itself, right? To the integrity of the tournament, not just the match you're playing in, but to Magic's community, that they have no choice but to give you a lifetime ban. But
How many people are banned for life right now?
There's a decent number of them actually, but they're almost all people who were either who had generally had some kind of assault, right? So they physically attacked someone. Is the vast majority. So either an opponent or a judge. That tends to be the predominant case. Yeah, I guess the question I wonder about is whether or not the 3 years is certainly a long time, and like you guys said, 3 years could virtually be as good as a lifetime ban. Because what do you do? I mean, you could obviously get back into it, but you'd have to reestablish your group to play with. You'd have to get back involved with the latest sets and rebuild card database. Rebuild your collection. There's a lot that has to happen in order to be able to play Magic again. So I wonder if it's is there an expectation on Wizards' part that most people who get a 3-year ban are going to return to the game, and that the desire on the part of Wizards is for them to eventually, atone for their transgressions and return to Magic one day? Or do you think that 3 years is meant to be almost as bad as a lifetime ban as a means to deter other people from ever committing those crimes? So I guess short version of that question is the 3-year sentence more for rehabilitating the player or for deterring other people, or a little of both?
Well, I keep dying in the worst spots. I think it's a combination of both. I think in the end, we have to realize that Magic is a pretty low stakes in terms of financial. Stakes, it's pretty low stakes, and it's just a card game, and the DCI is, I don't know, enforcing rules on a nerdy card game. It's not the kind of thing that lifetime bans seem necessary for, since it's a game. But at the same time,
Right.
Since it's low stakes, like the consequences of a lifetime ban are pretty low. So maybe you could be more liberal about it. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a tough thing because the argument could be used. Obviously, you can shape the argument for or against. I guess that's kind of BMAC's area of expertise, right?
Yeah. I think that, it's 3 or 4 years to some extent, like with how Dave was talking about, as a kid, sometimes people who are cheating are just young and they're like, wow, I'm so much younger than everyone else. I've got to cheat in order to be able to compete with these people who've been playing for 10 years. And maybe after they do that and they get kicked out for 3 years and they see all their friends having fun and their friends are like, yeah, you're an idiot. Why are you cheating? We don't want cheaters in the game. And it's certainly possible for people to be rehabilitated. I don't know if you're in your 20s or 30s or something, that's probably not happening. You're as much of a piece of crap as you're going to be for the rest of your life. But I think that's part of Wizards' motivation, is that cheating at a game, especially since there's a lot of a gray area and a lot of questions of intent, and there's lots of things that people have done that wouldn't necessarily count as cheating, but they're taking advantage of a situation to help them win a game. I think that Wizards feels like, 3 years gives people an opportunity to reevaluate that. There's a lot of, especially now on social media, there's all the public shaming that can go with it, that people are going to know about what you did, and it might be harder for you to be successful. I mean, it certainly was harder for Bertuccini to do it when he came back.
Oh, yeah. But, it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, I guess. with respect to what the purpose is. Yeah, I think the DCI's role in all of this. They're like it's such a low stakes game, Magic, especially if you compare it to like poker, which can be much higher stakes. Then I guess really the DCI is just again protecting the integrity of the game, but more importantly, I think their job is to protect the environment of the tournament, and cheaters ultimately aren't that harmful. The amount of money being quote unquote stolen is fairly small, and the harm is pretty easy to take care of. That said, whenever one of these stories comes out, inevitably there is a lot of community backlash against cheating, right? I don't think a lot of people would be upset if cheaters were banned for life. It's almost like white collar crime, right? Like people like Bernie Madoff, right? People, their crime. I mean, Bernie Madoff's a bad example, perhaps, because his crimes were actually very harmful to a lot of people. But in some cases, the community outrage over certain crimes tends to be disproportional to the actual punishment given out. And in the case of Steven Speck, there were a lot of people who felt that they should have given him a lifetime ban for what he had done. But I guess that's part of it just comes with the territory. People are always going to be pretty torn on cheating. And I guess people who experience cheating perhaps will feel even more slighted. Is it one of those cases, though, where the responsibility is on the players to educate themselves? Like Matt had said, he didn't pick up on his opponent cheating, and it turned out that Hunter happened to be watching and was able to recognize the cheating and inform him? Or is it really the role of the DCI to deter people from cheating in the first place?
Yeah. Well, I think that a lot of the people who raised a stink about the Steven Specs banning are pro players, and they're the ones who are affected the most by cheating. It's most likely the people are cheating in very high stakes situations. They play a lot of those, and they play against people like Steven Speck, who really are kind of stealing from them. And the pro players, even though it's not a lot of money, the money and the pro points, a lot of money can come out of getting one extra pro point here and there.
Yeah.
And so I think for them, they have a stronger incentive to fight cheating and get a bigger ban. And they also, are the ones who least want to have to spend mental resources tracking whether their opponent's cheating. You can get an edge just by making your opponent think that you're cheating them, because then they start focusing on what you're doing with your hands and where you kept your sideboard, and maybe they forget to, pay for something or play a land for a turn or make a small decision that ends up costing them a game. And so the less that they have to be vigilant and the more that the DCI takes on the vigilance for them, then the better it is.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. It's a tough one. I mean, the DCI's responsibility to protect pro players, protect all players, protect the tournaments. There's a lot of area that's open to interpretation there, I suppose. And I guess the question then is going to be one that's very similar to how places like the NFL and other major sports leagues handle things, which is the DCI being consistent enough? And that goes back to BMAC, what you had said about Bertoncini, right? So if Bertoncini comes back from his initial suspension for cheating and he cheats again, and they suspend him again for so much time the second time, can you use that as a benchmark for similar situations, right? So is there I don't think we have enough examples, honestly, to form a decision on whether or not the DCI has been consistent in their rulings. But I suspect it's something that they're cognizant of. Do you think that they have like a guideline? Like if, for this kind of cheating, it's 6 months. For this kind of cheating, it's 3 years, based on whether or not you're a repeat offender. Do you think they have that kind of a flow chart? Or do you think they kind of just go with it on a case-by-case basis? What do you think? Matt, do you think they've got an awesome flow chart of suspension somewhere?
Unlikely that Wizards of the Coast has an awesome organized anything anyway. They
go on Modo and they use Modo to determine suspension.
Yeah, the whole thing's inside of Modo. It's great. That's what Momir Basic actually is. It hands out suspensions.
They play Basic and they see what random creatures come out of Momir Basic.
They're like 6 months it is.
Yeah. Random suspensions would be hilarious. Like you would get somebody who had repeated warnings for slow play, and they'd get like a 5-year suspension. It'd be like, well,
poor Hunter.
Hunter would be screwed.
They just need a dartboard.
Yeah, man. If they ban people for slow play, I would never play Magic again.
No, you would also be screwed, David. Sorry, buddy.
They did ban Tomohiro Saito for stalling.
Yes, you can. Different. You can be disqualified from a tournament for slow play. So, but you have to do it a lot, a whole lot.
Yeah.
I'll practice.
So, anyways.
Yeah, Dave, try a little harder to do the slow play so you can up it a bit, get your chances up there to get booted.
Yeah, Dave, we should play more matches like that match we played at the beginning of Khans of Tarkir where we were both Abzan and we just want to shoot ourselves.
Yeah.
Oh, lucky you, Alamoth, you bastard.
Yeah, I got a legendary helmet, so we'll have to go decrypt that after the expansion hits on Tuesday.
Yay.
But all right, well, thanks everyone for an insightful discussion about cheating. Obviously, it's a very complex topic, and I did not have any intent of us actually answering anything or resolving anything because it is a crazy topic, and none of us are really qualified to say whether or not suspensions are accurate. So that's it. And in lieu of figuring out how to turn my stream off, I'm just going to figure out how to break the Twitch terms of service so that they suspend my account, and that'll get it turned off. So
just take your shirt off, Rich.
Yeah, there we go.
I mean, if having Matt Jones on your stream doesn't already break the terms, then
come on, I'm a human being, for Christ's sakes.
Hey Guardians, thanks for tuning in to the Doomed Travelers podcast. You can find more at doomedtravelers.com or follow at Doomed Travelers on Twitter for show updates and other nonsense. Make sure to subscribe to Hipsters TV on YouTube for videos of our previous episodes, and don't forget that you can find audio-only versions of the Doomed Travelers podcast on iTunes. For your host, Rich Stein, and Matt the Obliterator Jones, I'm David Bones McCoy. See you next time.
Nothing past William Howard